Hello, everyone. It's Charlene Lee, and I'm excited to be here talking today about artificial intelligence and generative artificial intelligence strategy. To just get started, I'd love for you to share where you're coming from, but also please share how are you using generative AI? How are you thinking about your strategy around it? How are you prioritizing what initiatives you are doing in generative AI first, second, third, or not at all? And the reason I want to talk about this today is that when you're thinking about a strategy is simply what you will do and what you won't do in order to achieve your goals. So you can do so many things with generative AI, and we'll talk about some of the use cases, some of the ways that it's developing, some of the approaches that companies are taking. But I really want to have this focus on the discussion about how you and your organization can start creating a strategy of using generative AI to achieve your larger strategic objectives. So, a lot to go through today. So, one of the things I'm very keen on with a strategic review is to talk about the process of how you want to do that. So, I want to just talk a little bit about what that looks like. Let me get some slides up here, up and going. Here we go. All right, here we are. So these are the big process that I'm going to talk about today. First of all, it's understanding what the use cases are. What can you do with generative AI? And we'll go through some of the top six use cases. Now, this is not exhaustive, but these are big categories of how you could use generative AI to give your organization a competitive advantage, to recognize more revenues, be more productive, have a better relationship with your customers, etc. Then we'll talk about how you assess your current strategy. And then we'll talk about how to actually prioritize which initiatives you're going to take into. All right, so we get into this. So, first of all, when we think about the use cases, I want to go and this is really hard to read. So, hopefully, you can see this. But the idea here is that you want to understand what are the new capabilities generative AI is going to give you, what new expectations customers have, and also how will your competitors and your partners be developing these capabilities with generative AI, and also how will they be using them to potentially put you out of business, not be as competitive as you. So it's really understanding how these use cases are going to impact not only your organization, but also the industry. And I just want to share a little bit where my slides are, because I know that this is always a great question that people have. I'm going to, and I actually prepared today, I'm going to put it into the chat too, as well, into the comments, so that you can pull it together yourself. So if you go to Bitly, you'll see it CLI-AI-strategy, and you can pull up the slides yourself. So one of the ways to think about use cases is, let me just make this a little bit different. Here we go. Let me just go through these use cases very, very quickly, because if you don't understand what generative AI can do, it's really difficult to understand how you could actually impact your strategy. So even if you decide not to do anything with generative AI for lots of really good and definite reasons, it's important to understand how it could impact your business and to have a plan of actually intentionally not doing these things, or knowing that you're going to do them at a certain point when certain conditions are being met, when the technology is developed, where you feel more confident with the trust that's needed to put these technologies in place. So, a couple of use cases that I want to pull up. First of all, the first one is creative. This is the one that's most often cited. It's being able to create text and with things like ChatGPT, images with Midjourney, code with, for example, GitHub, using creating audio and video even eventually. So these are places where, again, generative AI is at its most masterful. It's astonishing how good it is, how fast it is at generating this type of content. But we're also seeing some applications in design and innovation. So being able to generate new ideas and new concepts, because artificial intelligence, these generative AI tools are built on such large data sets. It's looking at the entire universe of options, and you can bring that in to solve design problems. I know some organizations are now using it to optimize some of their products that they're developing. So they have a certain specifications that need to be met with a product, certain weight densities and strength and tensile strength. It may be, for example, designing a website or an application where you're changing the resolutions and the screen resolutions multiple times. And generative AI can do a lot of those things automatically for you. So it makes it more efficient and more innovative in the designs. Personalization and customization. These are taking all of those deep data and information about a person or an organization and tailoring recommendations, for example. It's difficult to do this right now because there's so much data to parse through. But generative AI makes it pretty easy to know that these are my travel preferences. So the next time I go to a travel site like Expedia or Kayak, it'll know what those preferences are and just give me a more tailored information. So being able to customize information for your customers, for your employees, for the information that people are looking for, can create a much better experience. Discovery. This is being used especially in the scientific fields, in medicine, in astrophysics, in chemistry, material sciences, where you're generating hypotheses again, because these engines, these models have the entire body of all of knowledge and can parse through them. It can come up with innovative ways of combining chemicals and molecules or combinations to assist these researchers in discovering and testing, first of all, creating hypotheses and then testing them. Prediction, automation, efficiency. This is happening now where it's automating a lot of the repetitive tasks that knowledge workers have in manufacturing, in customer service, for example, in data analysis. If you've had a chance to play with Code Interpreter from ChatGPT, where you can upload a data set or a spreadsheet and just query it. No more needs to know how, you don't need to know how to create pivot tables or know anything about data analysis. You can just ask a question with natural language and it'll just give you back the answers. It's amazing to be able to try that. And then education. I think this is one of the most exciting use case where it's education in our schools, in our universities, but also in our workplaces. How do we tailor training and education for each student for the way that they like to learn? How do we improve the engagement with interactive experiences, which historically have been very difficult and costly to achieve and create, to actually help people learn better and retain the information in a better way? So these are all great use cases. And I want to go back and really talk a little bit about just and see there, first of all, any comments or questions. Oh, there's lots of comments here. Let's see. Let me just get through this. So just a lot of people chiming in saying hello. So got Enrique from Peru, Radu from Qatar. Ken is thinking this is great, super great information that you have. Haroon from Dubai, great to see you. And Ken is coming in from New Orleans. We have another person coming in from Wolverhampton. And one of the key things here is that, again, we have people from all over the world here joining. So thank you so much for joining. And I would love for you to share a little bit about how you're thinking about generative AI. What are you using it for today? How are you prioritizing or deprioritizing some initiatives that you could do today, but deciding not to? One person had a question: why isn't there wellness related AI in the presentation tiles in one of those use cases? You're absolutely right. There's so many other things. I kind of think of the wellness in the personalization and customization aspect. I have been on this tear to really try to improve my health, my eating, my exercise, my sleep. And to have tailored recommendations for me could really help with my wellness instead of getting generic information out there. I could upload my health information into a trusted place or pull it directly out of my medical health records and be able to just pull it in and have my health advocate, my doctor, and my nurses and everybody in my ecosystem be able to pull together a tailored and full picture of what my health is today, but also how it's being maintained. So this is all really good information. So I want to just go back and see if there are any other comments here. So we have Johan from Cork, Ireland. Another person. Yeah, here we go. just going so many comments coming in. Um, Ken has a great point here that this is actually going to help us expand. Ken, I have a way of thinking about this. This is so transformative on a personal level, but organizational level too. If we actually can harness just even a little bit of this, it's going to make us much better as people. And in some ways, it's going to actually help us become more superhuman. The things that we can do now that we couldn't before with these tools in our basket of tools. I don't know how to code. I can actually code now. I can make applications, which is feels really amazing to be able to do. So I think it's one of those things where we're still just beginning to understand how all of these things could be used. Jay, welcome from Rockland, Illinois. So Rockford. So great to see you here, Jay. Let's see. So people are using some of these tools now. So Ken is using AI for spatial learning with a game app. Ken, would love to hear more about this. If you have a demo of it, would love for people to share it. Anthony Cousins, great to see you, Anthony. He says, I use a 4-box grid for prioritizing AI opportunities. Priority 1 are things we can build that increase customer perceived value and we can charge more for. Anthony, thank you so much for sharing that. We're going to talk about that in just a second about how we prioritize. But I love this 2x2 of things that you can build right now that increase value and also that you can make money on. So definitely great things to be doing that for. Let's see, a couple other comments. Anthony is saying priority 2 is something that increases customer perceived value, but is a price and cost neutral for us. Thank you for sharing all this. 3 is prioritizing something that reduces cost and reduces potential value. And 4, I think you're still typing probably, is that things that just are not going to be helpful on either the customer side or great value for the organization. Love that 2x2. Thank you so much for sharing that, Anthony. We have also this person LinkedIn user. I'm sorry, I can't see your name. We are launching an AI-powered platform for family connection and to provide intergenerational connection. That's beautiful. That's wonderful. I love that because when we're thinking about all the things that you can create and add value to your organization, it's important to understand what can actually be creating that value. So I want to go back and talk about the next step, understanding these use cases. And then a really important thing is while you want to understand them, you don't want to be developing all of them at the same time and trying to come up with what I call the use case bonanza and analysis paralysis. Instead of trying to understand every single possible potential use case in your organization, much like Anthony, you want to start prioritizing it. And one of the most important ways to do that is to really assess your current strategy. So now we're going to turn away from the generative AI use cases and look at your current strategy. And again, I apologize that this is a little hard to read, but the idea here is that you want to go and look at when you develop your current strategy, you made some choices. You made and decided that certain things would be true in your organization in terms of your strengths and capabilities. You made some assumptions about how the industry would develop. You believe that certain things would be true about the ways that your customers would want to buy your products, what their needs were going to be. So, what did you assume to be true? What would have to be true for your strategy to be successful? Now that you know that these capabilities are there, you want to go back and reaffirm, do those things still hold to be true? Do you believe that these assumptions that you made are still going to be true? Do you have an advantage still in being able to create great marketing and sales pitches? Are you able to connect with your customers in ways that they expect? Or are they going to expect more personalization? In which case, you may want to look at the ability for generative AI to create those things. So some of the things that may be true is that you're more creative in these areas, or that if you are doing some sort of document processing, for example, you doing HR or legal or insurance in these fields, uh, using these tools, generative AI, can give you a huge leg up, and your competitors could be doing it too as well. So the assumptions that you make about what had to be true for your strategy to be successful need to be re-examined to see if they still hold true. And if they don't, then you want to be able to also generate new options to consider in your choices for the strategy. I can't emphasize this enough, and that is you need to be able to look at your generative AI strategy in the context of your overall existing business strategy. Because if you try to develop these initiatives based in a vacuum without a sense of how your overall strategy is going to be impacted, you're going to be spinning in circles. And if you're not the top of the organization, people at the top are going, so why does this matter? How does it help us win? How is it making us more competitive? How is it creating more opportunities for growth? How is it protecting us from threats coming in from partners or new from competitors or new entrants? And how are our partners going to be supporting us? How do we work better with our partners and our ecosystem with these tools? So, if you're trying to push through some generative AI strategies and initiatives, really tie back to your strategy. And I can tell you from having pushed through lots of digital transformation and disruptive innovation strategies with C suite people, they only care about a few things. And if you can't put generative AI in the context of those top strategic goals, they won't care. So put everything again against look at your current strategy and truly understand how is generative AI going to support it or challenge it, and also what are the new options that are being created for growth and revenue and profit advances. So one of the things that I think is so important is that you really need to be thinking about what that strategy looks like. And I have some great comments here. So Johan here, he's at Accenture and has invested 3 billion RMB in artificial intelligence so that we can indicate how serious you are. Again, Accenture has done so much in terms of this investment. But I really love this point that Johan is making. Strategy will need to be highly adaptive. And especially because this field, this space is so new. We are really, really, really early. But just because we're early doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a strategy. Again, a strategy is what you will do and won't do. And if you decide not to do anything in this space, then be intentional about it. Know that you're making a choice not to do something for the right reasons because it's too expensive, it's not the right time, the technology is too expensive, the risk is too high, the demand isn't there, it's not going to be an issue. But do that with intention of deciding not to do something in this space versus doing it because of I just don't care and I don't want to deal with this because it's new, it's uncomfortable, it's unknown. Again, I think having a strategy of knowing what you will do, what you won't do, when you will do something, when you won't do something is extremely important. So let me keep moving here. So the next thing I want to talk about is actually how to prioritize your initiatives. So I'm going to make this a little bit easier to see. And one of the really important things here is to be thinking about balancing again the demand against the risk. I really like how Anthony put it into a 2x2 of looking at which things would generate revenues and that customers want it and they would be willing to pay for it. Another way to think about it is the way that one professor, some people wrote in a recent article in Harvard Business Review. And this is coming from, let me just hide this banner so you can actually see it. This is from an article published in Harvard Business Review online on March 29th of this year. It's a great article called A Framework for Picking the Right Generative AI Project. And this is just one model of, again, another 2x2. But I thought this is a really good one because it's looking at the demand for a particular generative AI initiative against the risk. And the risk here is, again, multimodal. It could be the regulatory risk, the reputational risk, the risk that you're giving wrong advice. So you can see here, for example, that there's a lot of demand for this low-hanging fruit around generating content. So it's marketing, it's in learning, copy editing, ideation. A lot of those initial use cases that I talked about are in this upper left-hand quadrant because there's high demand for it, and the risk is relatively less compared to other things. being able to make medical diagnoses. There's a lot of question and concerns about whether it's actually better than a trained radiologist or pathologist at being able to understand what's going on. Legal advice. Would you trust an artificial intelligence to give you legal advice right now? Maybe not. But we can do some of the other things in terms of summarizing content that a paralegal would want to do across multiple legal documents for a lawyer to review to then give advice. So, understanding what activities against that risk profile is a really important step to take. I also want to just talk a little bit about just timing, because one of the things that I talk about here is laying out your investment timeline. Because some things are worth doing right now, other things are worth doing later. And a great example of this is being able to look at your technology. 2 weeks ago, I did something on the generative AI tech stack. And you can go see the live stream. I also written it up in my LinkedIn newsletter. And if you want to create your own proprietary large language models, in other words, these are things that are not publicly used, like Chat GPT, but instead inside of your firewall using your proprietary data. A great example of this is Morgan Stanley. They took 100,000 of their internal documents. These are training documents, internal investment advice, and they put them all into a private version of ChatGPT that their advisors that can go and use to create advice, get ideas, come up with new strategies for their clients. And again, it's highly proprietary because it's only their content, but they also know it's safe because it's all been reviewed, it's all been vetted, and they know that the information that's coming out of that engine is trustworthy. So it's really interesting to see the development of these private generative AI engines, but you can see here it's pretty involved. There's a whole entire stack that you have to build. And it's going to get easier in just a few months. I think that by the end of the year, it's going to be a lot easier to do this. Right now, it's still really hands on and difficult to build. So, thinking about the investment timeline of when these things will become easier to do may also shift your timeline of when you want to do things. All right. Before I go into the let me just go into the last part here, and then we'll go into the comments. So, the last part of developing your plan and prioritizing is developing that plan. I do believe in having a long term plan. I call it the 6 quarter walk. It's over the next 18 months. How do you see that the environment developing? What are the initiatives you're going to do immediately within the next 3 months? And also over the next 18 months. And from there, develop what I call a 30-day plan. In 30 days, come up with this plan. Come up with an idea of what this 18-month roadmap would look like. Again, understanding your use cases, assessing it against your current strategy. Again, this is a really quick look so that you can decide what you will do ASAP. Put in the right policies and the practices and guidelines and training in place to be able to start doing something, or even decide not to do something, but take 30 days to actually assess your current strategy and put this together. And then take the time then to put together over the next 90 days an 18-month plan. And I think this is so important because having a plan, you can always change it. And the beauty of the 6 quarter walk is that at the end of each quarter, you're extending it another quarter and you're also revising that plan. What Johan had said before, making sure that your strategy is highly adaptive is absolutely crucial when creating a generative AI strategy. Because I guarantee you, things are going to change. I literally wake up every single morning and reading through my news feeds, looking at the analysis, and my hair is on fire. Like all these things are changing constantly week to week. And so it may feel like it's impossible to create a strategy, but it's your strategy is less dependent on all of these external changes and much more dependent on where you believe your competitive advantage is going to be, what you hold to be true, how the market will develop, how these technologies will develop, how your customer needs will be changing and developing over time. So really, I think this is a fantastic time to be thinking about how generative AI, and I can't stress enough how important it is to have a strategy. And Johan just corrected me. It was $3 billion, not renminbi. Thank you for correcting that. I saw the R. I was like, what is that? So must have been a typo. So a couple of things here. We have so many comments here. Let me just go through here. So Nicholas is sharing that marrying AI strategy to overall business strategy is critical and something that we have been discussing with our Marcom team. Is fantastic, Nicholas. I think it's so important to be thinking about, again, your AI strategy in the context of overall business advantage. Mark has, good to see you, Mark. A point here, corporate innovation. He uses generative AI as a tool to argue against and debate yourself to become smarter on a topic and reduce bias. This applies to product ideation, corporate politics. I love that, corporate politics, to be thinking about this, competition, and much more. I love this, Mark, that you're looking at this as a thought partner. You're using generative AI personally to help you think about and think through some of these things. And I love the application of this to corporate politics too, as well. So in this situation, what are my options? How do I think through the dynamics of all of this? Let's see. Jay says here, there's a chicken and egg issue. Does the established architecture and mores of organization determine AI, or does AI determine the corpus of the organization? Great question, Jay. I think, frankly, right now, that a lot of the ways that organizations are structured are determining how we think about AI and how we bring it in. But I think over time, AI is going to shape and shift how we think about ourselves and the organization and the structures and the glues and the connections that hold an organization together, which is fundamentally why technologies like generative AI are so transformative and also why it's so disruptive. So more to come. I'm going to talk about that next week in particular. Jay is using AI to generate graphics and to help with research for content. I hear you, Jay. I look at a lot of that discovery aspects of things, the ability to go and use this to just handle so much of the research that I personally do. I sat down and looked at my activities, and I estimate that about 70% of the things that I do are being changed because of generative AI. And I have all the various engines sitting in front of me so that I can use them throughout the day. Let's see. Anthony has this point. Relying on ChatGPT might give you good results, but it also may not differentiate you from your competitors. A really good point, because everyone has that. Your AI strategy needs a data strategy so you can build and train your own models and IP. And I do agree with this. I think, again, agree with you 100%, Anthony, that the right now, the low-hanging fruit around productivity and generating the creative content using these publicly available tools are a huge productivity gain. I am hearing from people that they expect to see 25% productivity gains by the end of this year. And this is against a backdrop of all the technologies that we've seen haven't really helped with our overall productivity. It's been marginal. And we're starting to see like tremendous exponential gains coming from these tools just being used off the shelf. So, but realize, as Anthony says, over the next 18 months, you're going to have to develop different types of capabilities, primarily using your proprietary data to give yourself a true competitive advantage. So many people are just cheering Anthony for these comments. Again, thank you so much, Anthony, for joining. Let's see. Jay wants to know what's my favorite to use for research. I definitely use ChatGPT for just ideation more than anything else, summation of various topics. I really like Bing Search right now. I use it constantly because it is attached to a live search engine and live data. I also appreciate how Bing annotates the sources, so I can go back and see where was the original source of that, and that leads to a lot of other things. So those are my two main engines that I use. I use a couple other ones just to test, but I'm playing with Poe because it poe.com. Because it actually pulls in a lot of different engines. So I just get a little bit of a different result when I use that versus Chat GPT versus Bing. So I like to use and ask the same question across multiple artificial intelligence generative AI tools, because I get different ideas and I'm doing a lot of ideation around this. All right, so that's what I have for today. Again, I cannot emphasize enough that if you are working in an organization that has decided to take a pass on generative AI because it's too early, that you go back and just take a check and say, what could we use it for? Even if we don't decide to do them today, what will our plan be? What circumstances have to change for us to be ready to dive in? Because if you don't have a plan, you don't have a strategy, that is so much worse. It's actually riskier than having a bunch of experiments and seeing what's going on, and just experimenting to see what can we do with this? What can't we do with it? And to be learning and understanding how these tools and technologies can be applied in your business. So join me next week. We're going to be talking about some new topics, and it's something I'm very excited about, which is how generative AI is going to change our workforce. I'm actually doing some courses with LinkedIn. I'll be actually at LinkedIn next Tuesday, recording these courses on the future of work and the impact of generative AI on that. And so I'll be taking some parts of that and talking about it in terms of how our workforce is going to change. Again, this concept of having a superhuman workforce. How do we lead them? How do we develop them? What expectations will they have? And we'll talk and touch on a very, very sensitive topic, which is what jobs will be created and also what jobs will be lost, what jobs would disappear. And I think we have to be very honest about this with ourselves and our colleagues about how work will change and to prepare ourselves so that we can do this in the most thoughtful, ethical, responsible way possible to navigate these changes. So join me next week to do that. And again, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate all the comments from people. I know Anthony has left the stream, but thank you, Anthony, for really coming in and really helping and sharing your experiences too as well. I will see you next week. And until then, enjoy, have some fun. And as always, please reach out to me. I would love to hear your questions and also hear about what your experiences are. Okay, thank you so much. And I'll talk to you next week.